afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We hope that you are well. I'm trying to make a video or series on famine, which I believe, this is a personal conviction, I don't think that anybody can dispute it. You can't begin to dispute it, but I, perhaps more than other people, am a little bit besotted by this topic. I believe that it is going to be the greatest threat. It and its consequences will be the greatest threat to the welfare of the world, the Western world, South Africa, and we, you and I, in 2023. And I've made a first installment, episode, part, and ended up digressing quite a bit onto other topics. But I was endeavoring to link the idea of the threat to us and knowledge. And so I began with some verses from the Bible in which our Lord explains to us, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Not the bad guy, the good guy, my people, not people perish for lack of knowledge. He wasn't saying that people perish for lack of knowledge. He was saying, my guys, my O's, my team, for lack of knowledge, not for lack of knowledge. In other words, they're dumb and so they die. Well, it sounds rough, but I didn't write it. So yeah, and I connected that to the Darwin Awards, and just it's important that we should know. So I've been studying for about 9 months now famine and how it works and where it comes from and what it does and under what circumstances it functions, and that tied in very much to something that I stumbled across, which is it depends how you look at it. But you could take it as far as the 226-year period beginning in 535, 536 AD. Or you could condense it down to about 20 years. Bear with me. So, what happened was that in 535 AD, excuse me, a volcano erupted somewhere in the world. It has traditionally been ascribed to Krakatoa, but there's another one called Tambarona that is now a candidate, and in Iceland, I believe, or Greenland perhaps, where that may be the culprit. And this huge super volcano spewed so much ash and what they call aerosols into the atmosphere that it made the earth dark by the year 536. And there are records. For instance, a guy called Procopius and another guy whose name I'll think of in a second, who wrote about it. I'm talking now in Europe. There is a heartbreaking record from China. It's actually the most well expressed of the lot. It's really quite saddening. Bring tears to your eyes. Of how the whole earth went dark. That was followed by another volcano a few years later, and another and another. So altogether, 4 volcanoes contributed to a roughly, call it 20-year period of darkness, and in the absence of sun, vegetationless, let's call it, scarification, desertification. There was no agriculture, there was famine. Famine. Now, and amongst all of this came the plague of Justinian. Now, the plague of Justinian, people sometimes say, oh, no, that was the Black Plague. That one was the Bubonic Plague. And that one. There have been three major sets of what are called the plague in recorded history. There may have been earlier ones, but there are three sets. The first set, the plague of Justinian, was exactly the same as the two later sets. In the later ones, the plague of Justinian ended in 767, I think. And so it ran for a couple of hundred years. And then there was one in the 1300s and one again in the 1600s. And since then, as a matter of interest to you, and this is going to be relevant if you think about it, if you bear it in mind, since then, there have been in Asia, but they don't really count as those three core major events, or those three major events. And since then again, so let's say in the 20th century and 21st, 90% of all recorded plague cases, whether you want to call them bubonic plagues or black deaths or whatever, have been in sub-Saharan Africa and Madagascar. So, back to the thing. They are all one and the same. They are caused by a bacillus, so that's like a germ, for want of a better word. To keep it in simple layman's terms, like domestos, kills 99% of all germs dead, but it's referring to more than just germ, you know. Anyway, a bacillus, a non-motile bacillus, that means it can't swim or whatever, just parks there, called Yersinia pestis. And that bacillus infects oriental rat fleas. So oriental means eastern. Austral means southern, as in Australia. Boreal means north or northern, like you've heard of the northern lights up near the Arctic. Aurora borealis, the lights of the north. And then occidental means west. So the eastern rat flea, it gets stuck in the flea's esophagus. It sits there. It makes that place its home. Actually, not the esophagus, the top of the stomach. So down your food pipe, just at the top of the stomach. And that causes the rats to go berserk with hunger. And in their starvation, they become frantic. And instead of just hanging around on rats, they go to other animals. They go to any living creature in the kind of belief, I suppose you could say, or the hope that I can't eat here, I can't swallow, I can't get the food into my stomach. I gnaw and I gnaw and I gnaw and I gnaw on these rats, but I don't get any bigger and fatter and I don't mate and so on. Maybe if I try another animal, and that's what causes them to go to humans. The fleas don't, as a matter of habit, seek out humans as readily when they're healthy as when they're unwell. When they go to humans and they infect the humans, we humans develop buboes. Buboes are like large, dark pustules or large, dark blisters. I've seen photographs, modern photographs from, the occasional outbreaks, small outbreaks of bubonic plague in Africa and Asia and what have you in recent years. So it's like a blister about that size, and it's dark. Hence, Black Death. The Black Death was to do with the buboes, the color of the buboes, those pustules, those blisters that we get. And there are three different ways of dying with which I'm not entirely familiar, but if you're untreated, you die. And So you've got the volcano in 535, you've got in 536 the earth goes dark, in 541 the plague of Justinian. So it's the first of these three major iterations of the plague that have been recorded in history, because it was during the reign of Justinian, the Roman Emperor Justinian. And about 20% of Europe died just from the plague. But already there had been huge mass starvation throughout Europe for lack of food. People were dying left, right, and center, and it was being fairly well recorded. And it had such a devastating effect upon Europe and other places too, but particularly Europe, that it had influences upon the Christian faith. For example, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but people's minds were bent by this hopeless despair of continuing darkness day after day, year after year, for decades. Not to mention the plague recurring on and off for ultimately 226 years or something. Anyway, how do you survive that? That's my question. How do I survive that? And you might say, but Simon, what are you worried? You're worried about the Black Plague? You're worried about famine? Sina van Rensburg said it's going to be A-OK with us. Island style. Zanzibar. Lekker. Fun in the sun. I'll tell you why. Because in recent years, over the past 18 months, from March of last year, March 2021, we began to see continual devastation of the food supply in the world. Numerous events knocking the food supply. And it hasn't yet reached us yet. And it may be, in fact, I'm positive that it will be, because we know that Sina van Rensburg is a true prophet of the true God. Less severe for us. But that doesn't mean hunky-dory. And I believe that part of the reason that it's going to be less severe for us is because we, Suidlanders, are taking the lead in encouraging people to prepare. Let's stop it there, and I'll give you a list of reasons why a massive, let's stop this part here. And in the next part, I'll give you a long list of reasons why a global famine is now all but inevitable, and why it shall be very, very bad in South Africa, albeit, by the grace of God, not quite as bad as elsewhere. Look forward to seeing you in a few minutes' time. Cheers, bye.